Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, On2Air Backups. On2Air Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with On2Air Backups at On2Air.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, On2Air Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with On2Air Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at On2Air.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. We are in episode 7 of season 20. Good to be with you. We've got myself, Alli, and Camille, and special guest Chris Dancy. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, everyone.
I think everybody should know who Chris is. That should be a familiar face. But we're excited to have Chris back. We've had him on once or twice in the past, and we'll get an update on Chris and everything going on in his world later in the show, but I'll first walk us through what we're going to be doing. Built on Air podcast is an hour-long show. We'll first start with our Round the Bases to keep you up to date on all the community news and Airtable updates. And then we'll talk about On2Air, our primary sponsor, and how you can get signed up there. Then we'll learn about Chris and his background and story. And then Chris is going to walk us through his base that manages his entire life. Is this called Caretable? Is that the name of your base that we're going to be seeing?
It was originally Airtable, and then I built Caretable because interfaces was new, but now it's just back to being Airtable and it's one base. So that's the big update. You can sign off now.
Okay, that's it. So we're learning about that. You won't want to miss this. It's got to be the most complex, intense base you'll ever see. And then a shout out to join our community at Built on Air. And then finally, Camille's going to walk us through some automations using utility records for to help in your automations and whatnot. So excited for that. First start with our Round the Bases. Let's see what we've got going on. So last week, Airtable is now doing user groups. So they've got a couple user groups that they're starting within the Airtable community. And Kevin is helping to organize that. So I believe they've had an enterprise user group for a while. I think they had another one, but now they have an education user group, a marketing user group, product operations, and an AI user group. So if you fit into any of those categories, then if you go to the Airtable community, you should be able to see those, and you have to opt in to join those and participate in them. So that's a shout out for those. I'm going to jump ahead here. Let's see. Well, let's keep going down. Okay, so I know a lot of Airtable users use make.com, and now Make has a new product called Make Grid, which I'm not exactly sure what it is. They don't give any screenshots, but it's basically like a visual of like everything going on across all of your tools and things like that. Anybody else have any insight here?
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Nope.
Yeah, so I'm curious. I would have thought they would give some screenshots of it. So you at least get a sense of what it is. So
we heard a little bit about this almost 2 years ago at the Airtable in San Francisco. They said this was coming. They didn't call it Grid at that point. But they haven't shown any screenshots. What I thought was really interesting about Grid was apparently they had a pretty big event in Europe to launch this. Did you guys see that?
No.
Yeah, so they must have had 300 or 400 people at this conference. It looked like it makes specific. And they had someone on demoing it, but there were no actual videos. So maybe check out YouTube or link or Twitter or whatever they call it now and see if there are any quick videos. But I was kind of anxious to see it. It looks like they're pushing more toward that visual layout that Zapier did a few years ago.
Yeah, there was Zapier from the no code ops team. They built something that's probably similar to this, and then Zapier acquired it and might be building it in. So Zapier will likely come out with something similar.
I'm kind of happy to see making it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Yeah, they got acquired and seems to continue to innovate even after the acquisition.
Yeah, I just met a few people. They're just super. I don't know. They're super nice people.
That's good. All right, next one. Okay, so this we saw from Russell. He also posted this in the BuiltOnAir community. I haven't seen this published by Airtable, but Airtable has a co-builder, which up until this point allowed you to create new bases using AI, using a prompt. But now they have the ability to extend existing bases with a prompt using AI. So that'll be interesting. Good evolution of their co-builder product.
Yeah, I think this is useful. I think one of the complaints I have about some of the newer Airtable features is that they're great if you want to start over or start fresh. Like manage apps, for instance, you can't convert an existing base into a managed app. You can create a new managed app from it and then several children from that, but the original kind of stays put. This is in contrast to that, where you can have something that exists and build on with it with some of the newer Airtable features, which I think is, where I'd like to see, because there are a lot of new people to Airtable, a lot of new customers, and a lot of people who've been using it for quite some time.
Yep. Very true. All right. Okay. Another form builder, fill out, which is a very popular one. Looks like they now have a new functionality. I know a lot of Airtable users use fill out. So now they have human in the loop, workflows, automations, approvals. And so now fill out approvals is live. Has anybody played with it? I know, Chris, you're a big fill out user.
Well, no, I wanted to. I mean, I think I should have a comment somewhere in there with just the eyeballs, because what they had was in their update. They said coming soon for Airtable. So I love fill out. I was like, I don't know, probably one of the first few customers they had. To that end, I was completely abused by all the things that everyone got to not have to live through them were making work. But I think I'm not going to try it until they have the Airtable integration. But I mean, again, we're actually integrating fill out into Airtable next year. There'll be a whole fill out part of the conference, just because I think fill out is one of those companies that is becoming a brand onto its own beyond just forms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's no interesting.
Doubt.
Yeah, I reached out and wanted to see if they wanted to officially come on board to do that, so I don't have to curate that track and those speakers, but they just don't feel they're ready yet. I'm like, oh, you were ready last year, but okay.
I think of all of the partner programs that Airtable has, all of the different SaaS tools that a lot of people use in conjunction with Airtable, fill out is probably the one with the most glowing reviews. When there's a feature missing in fill out, it's normally, I hear it in the tone of, man, I wish I could do this. But if something's missing from like Softer or something, it's like, I can't believe they don't have this thing. I don't know. I feel like a lot of Airtable people really love fill out, despite fill out not necessarily being exclusively an Airtable product.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's amazing how quickly, as a fellow software engineer, like how quickly they push new feature and functionality out is pretty remarkable.
Well, their team background, click on Dominic. He came from somewhere. I mean, they're all hardcore engineers with kind of super duper Yeah, he was at Retool.
Retool. Yeah.
So, I mean, the guy knows how to code. He knows how to scale. You know, what I really like about watching Dominic online, specifically LinkedIn, is he also knows how to work that system to get views on those posts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just think there's such a fine line between looking cringy on LinkedIn and looking talented, and Dominic looks talented.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
Camille doesn't. Camille, you know what I mean? You look real. Some people look so cringy on. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what makes him cringy, but he's good. But this is sexy. I don't know. This reminds me of when Jotform added. Was it Jotform or FormType that added the database behind the tool about 3 years ago?
Jotform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I tell Dominic all the time, once he adds just a little bit of like low code in front of a form where you could actually have a site, he blows right into that whole softer, pory stack space. He's going to blow right into it. He doesn't even see it.
Yeah.
Or maybe he does, but he refuses to say they're going to do it.
Yeah. It's an interesting place they're in. So, okay. Yeah. But it looks like Airtable and Notion not quite ready yet. So that's what Chris and us are waiting for. So, okay, next one. This was curious if anybody, looks like they were in Chicago for a product-led summit in Chicago. I did not make this one. I did go last week. There was one in Philadelphia. I went to that one last week. So Airtable's got several city-specific events. So if you haven't been to one, you should check those out, see if they're coming to your city anytime soon. And okay, this is an interesting one. Airtable is now available in AWS Marketplace. So what that means, my understanding is if you're an AWS customer, you're already paying a lot of money to AWS. You can now essentially purchase Airtable using your AWS account. So it just shows up as a line item as part of your AWS billing. So it reduces the friction to become an Airtable customer. So for large enterprises that want to just make it streamlined through AWS, this is a pretty interesting approach. Be curious to see how that impacts their adoption.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
That is the side of enterprise that I don't really cover. They don't let me touch billing.
Yeah. What I don't know is, what I'd be curious is if this allowed you to store your Airtable data into your own AWS, network instead of it's being hosted in Airtables. I don't think that's what this means, but that was my original thought of like, oh, you almost could install Airtable into your own AWS environment, but I don't think it's that.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that a lot of enterprises are missing, being able, like, finer control over where their data actually sits. But yeah, it feels like they would have made that a bigger deal if that were the case.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the BuiltOnAir community. This I thought was cool. We might need to do a segment on this. So Scott Rose brings this up. I think this has been around for a while, but good reminder. So if you're in an interface and you have a linked record, and then that has a lookup to another linked record, you can actually click on that lookup field and it'll bring the sidebar over as if it was, one child removed. So you can essentially go 2 tables down and interact with that grandchild record in the sidebar, similar to how you can interact with child records. But it looks like there are some limitations on that.
Yes.
There are. You can't. Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead, Alli.
No, I was just going to say exactly what Scott said. You can't add new records through a form or link or unlink the records if you're working with a lookup field, which makes sense because it is a computed field.
Yeah.
But there are other workarounds to get around that too. You could have a button run an automation to add a record to that list, and it'll show up right in front of you, which is nice. But this is a great feature. I believe has been around since day one of interfaces that is super powerful. It does eliminate the need for a lot of clicks and having to make things messier.
Yep.
So, yeah. This is another thing where, like, the concept of utility records, which I'll cover later, if you have a system where you're connecting a lot of records to one record for whatever reason, you can make great use of this sort of feature. It's sort of a replacement for, in the blank layout, you can have as many, tables and galleries pointed at random tables as you want with no real clear connection between the data. This is kind of a half step where you can connect, all records that are in some way linked to a specific record, whatever record you're looking at for the detail page or for the record review layout. But it's really useful. And probably next episode we'll show how to do this.
Yeah, that would be good. All right. Thanks, Scott, for the update there. Okay. So last week we talked about, it was like fresh off the press, portals. They announced it. So this is just the LinkedIn post, but what caught our eye was the comments on this. And it's kind of interesting. So not the most positive comments, in particular around the pricing of portals. A lot of frustration of people saying, this just is not feasible at this pricing to work, and kind of where they're coming in. And so, the competitors, the softers, the stackers that sit on top of Airtable likely still have a place. Their pricing points are much lower. So this is likely targeted for more enterprise customers that want to stay within Airtable. So that seems to be the general consensus of feedback here.
I just saw something today on this too. When I originally met with our closing keynote, who ended up not coming, her name escapes me. Does someone know her name?
She wasn't there.
Yeah. She's so good.
Aisha.
Yes, Aisha. Yeah. When I originally met with her about portals and bringing them so people at the conference could use them this year, what I was told and what I'm still getting quoted is, you can get this cheaper. So they will go down to almost $4 a seat from $8, which again, that's still, you can just ask. What I thought was really interesting was, even in what I saw today, I can't remember where I saw it, it's being offered at the team level, which wasn't an option before Airtable. It was just the business and enterprise level. And at that team, wherever that screenshot I saw today was, it said, and contact us for additional discounts, which I've never seen them say that in writing before. So I do think they're listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they're trying to find, where that product market fit is on pricing there. But what's your... Yeah, go ahead, Alli.
I was just going to say, it's got to be a struggle because they don't want to cannibalize themselves. Like they make it too low, then they could potentially lose millions of dollars, because all these people are going to be like, I don't want to pay $20 a month per user. I'm just going to switch them to a portal user. And so I can imagine it's a very difficult line to find. But yeah, the pricing is prohibitive in a lot of cases, I think, unfortunately.
I've been saying this for 7 years now. The problem isn't Airtable pricing. The problem is Airtable permissions. At the way the permissions are structured drives the pricing model. Point blank, end of sentence, nothing else to talk about. And until they can relook at how permissions are defined across the entire system, right? We thought maybe it'd be views, then we got interfaces. Sorry, I could go down a big long rant on this. But I think at the end of the day, until they come out with what I would call a self-service license, which is something between portal and a softer, where you basically have one process that anyone can use on a web type form, not an interface, right? How most companies self-service works, right? Camille, I was part of the installation of ServiceNow at Apple back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they still, I don't know, but I think they might still use it. But we sold self-service licenses, which was a different, you get 5,000 users for one flat fee, right? And they could go into this one process all day long, whatever that process will look like. So that being said, I don't think this is an Airtable trying to bifurcate people into enterprise and not. I think this is an engineering challenge they're managing through until they can figure out what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
I think my thing that makes me hesitant about portals today, aside from, pricing, is I feel like there's certain types of interface pages that are missing that I would want in a portal. So like the welcome page, I think it's called welcome or something, overview. The overview page that's relatively new, was added this year. That's pretty nice, but you can only have like sort of static information on it, nothing really dynamic. And there's no true replacement for the blank layout yet. It's still just sort of there in legacy format, and dashboard is close to what I want, but not quite. And I think there's just something missing. I can't quite put my finger on what page I want to see in an interface quite yet, but I can't quite design a portal for strictly external users, which is what portals is, sort of aimed at. A portal user must be a different email domain than your email domain, essentially. So strictly external people, I don't know if I could give them the experience I would want that I can give them in something like Softer, in Stacker. Someone in the comments mentioned Bubble, which I hate, but you could build in Bubble. I don't know. I don't know if it's quite there yet from a design standpoint.
Yeah, I agree.
Webflow, Chris says Webflow. Yes, exactly. WeWeb as well. Any of those.
And I think it's, what's NoLoco, that other company that's kind of newer. Yep. So to me, this looks close to what they're doing. And obviously they're doing it at a different pricing model. But I just said on Facebook today exactly what Camille said. And maybe it's because Camille and I just come from backgrounds where you have to think about what the user wants first. Mm-hmm. Airtable is one of those rare tools where you don't have to think about the people you're building it for. I don't know why we don't say that out loud. We don't need to be ashamed of it, right? But I think when you think about, well, what is the user experience? Until there's a welcome or overview, that's mobile, right? Mm-hmm. I think we're kind of stuck. And then the user experience, if you're not on Airtable, when you invite someone to portals, is not very pleasant. It's like it walks them through Airtable onboarding, which again, sorry, there's no need to do that, right? You're inviting them to your portal. You're not inviting them to your CRM to market webinars to.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Do you guys want to talk about set up a portal and set up a fake email? It's like, this is no different than sharing my code that I used to get $10 for. It's like, it doesn't feel friendly at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things about portals is that they, you could see it in the screenshot, that you can custom brand the login page, so it shows your logo rather than Airtable's, but there are pieces of Airtable that are still in there. And,
yeah, it's not a full white label experience.
No.
But to to Aisha and everyone else, because they're lovely people, it is beta, so they are listening. But gosh, Camille, I really felt it when you said there's no kind of welcome page. It's like, I know, I need a welcome page.
It's not quite there, and maybe they'll add it with the, in conjunction with the beta. I feel like it'd be relevant for regular interfaces as well, not just portals.
And how hard could it be to add some code that we used to have over in extensions to put in a picture or just a static piece of text or something? That blank layout you talk about, to me, that thing is crap. You can do everything in that blank layout, but it's almost like they said, okay, here's a full turkey dinner, and by the way, now you just get stuffing.
Exactly.
So yeah, little things like that. Base Row is an alternative to Airtable, and they have their own sort of like interfaces, and it's more like, it feels more like HTML, if that makes sense, but you could put a static image there. So it's things like that where I'm like, I feel like interfaces should have this.
Yeah. Yeah, and Chris, you were probably one of the first to use it in a real world example. You used it for Airtable, right?
And it works great for Airtable, let's be honest, right? everybody knew Airtable already, so it wasn't going to be that much of a jolt of your user experience. I mean, if you were there at the conference, it worked on mobile. I mean, again, there are some benefits. But, you know, I went back because I wanted to use it at one of my clients. It has like 1,300 external members, right? And like, you know, yeah, at $4, it's kind of doable. But without the welcome page, these are not smart people that I'm dealing with. They will get into that, sign up, and like, are you on a team? Invite your team member. And they're going to be like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's move on. A couple more to wrap up. This is a good reminder on API usage. So if you're a developer using APIs, to understand like how it works, especially now they're cracking down on abuse of their API limits. They used to not stop people that were hitting the limit, but now at least on the free plan, they're locking that down. And so just to understand how it works, if you're reading a list of records from a table, you can only read 100 at a time. So some tools like Make and Zapier, I think they abstract this so you don't realize under the hood, if you're reading in 500 records, it actually has to make 5 API calls to read 100 at a time. So even though it looks like one operation in Make or Zapier, it's actually multiple API calls under the hood. So that's going to add up quickly. So ZZ here is realizing that. Looks like they're hitting the limit. So if you are seeing that and you start to see they now show in your dashboard in your account your API usage. And so if you're not sure where that's coming from, this might be a likely explanation. That's
interesting.
Okay, last one. We'll wrap up. Okay, this is a good reminder on, so a very common use case is pre-filling forms and then also hiding them. So if you're using something like fill out, you can definitely do things like that. But inside of Airtable forms, there is a way to hide fields. And depending on the field type, you can pre-fill it and hide. Is that correct? I've played with this, and it's different behavior, I think, in the interface forms versus the legacy forms. There's 4 different types of forms, and Chris loves them all.
They all treat this differently. So yeah,
Chris, exactly.
You can hide a field, but it won't submit. It has to be visible on the page to submit.
I have form PTSD. I'm just going to say it out loud. The form situation is so anxiety provoking to me.
It's not great. I feel like you could make a strong argument for any of the behaviors that the forms have. The problem is that all the forms have different behaviors. So you have to remember which one is which and figure out which one works best. And
yeah, some of them can be online, some of them can't. If they have a linked record, they behave different. I mean, I don't know what's happening there or what that future looks like, but it terrifies me.
Yeah,
it's one of the few parts of Airtable that I suddenly feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
No, it's hard to keep it straight. It's like, oh wait, no, it's actually this version of the form that can do that versus the other. It is very, it's crazy. But I think the key thing for this post is what Russell is mentioning here, which is that this can be, if you are using the URL to hide a field, it is not secure, and you should be very aware of what will happen if somebody decides to get rid of that part of the URL and they can see that field. If it's just a text field, probably not a big deal. But if it's a linked record field that's like linking it, you're pre-filling the link to the contact that you're asking to fill out this form, they could easily end up seeing your entire list of contacts. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of nuances. And I don't believe you can hide and pre-fill a linked record field type. At least that's...
I think you can.
In the new interface?
Well, when you say interface form,
in the interface
what do you mean? Because that could be
one where at the top bar if you click forms.
So the top bar, what I'll call the top bar form, I think you can pre-fill and hide a linked record. I can test offline to see if that's still the case.
You
I
got-
do know for full page interface forms that aren't in the top bar, that are in the sidebar, super confusing.
Yeah.
You can have a field pre-filled and locked so it can't be edited by the user, but it must be visible on the page to submit. You can't hide it. So that's what we mean by there's differences between all of these variations of forms, all of which could be reasonably called an interface form. Airtable, please fix this.
Yeah.
I always have to do what you said, Camille, when I use that form and actually create a section and just tell the user, this section is just letting you know what you're working on. So they're like, why is it there, but I can't touch it?
Right.
It's weird. From a UI standpoint, I like the form in the traditional tool across the top. It makes sense. Data automation forms. It makes sense. It just makes sense. I like it. It makes sense. Then I go out to interfaces and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to not be sick because I don't know what to do with any of that. And then I get to that welcome or overview page that's not mobile. And I only look at what's mobile. I might need medication. It's all so overwhelming. I'm not lying.
No, it is. It's very overwhelming. And that form, the one that's the interface page form, not the one in the top bar, but the interface page form, I almost never use that. It's like, you submit it, it doesn't go anywhere. Like you just have to go search for the record that you just created.
I think that's the one you can hide based on permission too, like a whole section if you're on a high enough plan where you can't do it in the top form.
Yeah.
Which
because you have to be logged in. So that's, there are advantages to that page, but man, is it janky.
Yeah. I mean, you could do the same kind of things if you enable add records through a form as an option on a list view, for example. Like that form is great. It's a little modal that pops up. It's got the same functionality, I think, as the sidebar, the interface page form, I think.
Can we just make a general plea to the Gareths and the other YouTubers out there? Listen, we love your films where you talk about these new. Just do one film on how to on-F your form. I need someone to show me all the different variations of forms and and then create a giant matrix that I need to study with AI to figure out which one to use.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be useful.
I wonder why people love fill out.
Yeah, and that's the conclusion, Jen. Check out fill out. All right, let's move on. We've got a lot to cover. So if you are running your business on Airtable, best practice is to make sure your data is stored outside of Airtable. That's where Onto-Air Backups comes in. You can store your data in your own Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, and now OneDrive, and make sure your data is stored securely. And you can also restore back into Airtable now with Onto-Air. So check it out. Use promo code BuiltOnAir at ontoair.com. Get a discount and make sure you can sleep soundly and know your data is backed up outside of Airtable. Okay, Chris. Let's learn a little bit about Chris. I'm sure everybody knows who Chris is, but we're going to learn a little bit more.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Chris. Welcome back to the show.
Almost 5 years.
Excellent. I know, it's so crazy. Oh my goodness. Well, for the probably 0 people that don't know who you are yet, could you just share a little bit about your background and how you joined the Airtable world?
Sure. So if you read Airtable this year or watched my keynote, I actually have a really long background. I'm 57 years old. So I spent from the 90s until the early or late 2000s in enterprise IT. So I started out in WebMD, all through the, IT asset management, all the way up to ITIL, CMDBs, project management, all the things. I watched DevOps come and people were like, what? It was a whole thing. And then by 2014, so that's my career track. By 2014, I became a D-list internet celebrity known as the world's most connected person. And for the last 10 years, I've been that. Most of the time, I haven't had a real job since 14 because I get paid to be me. So how Airtable comes into it's the reality of it. And then how Airtable came into it was in that same period of time, I became really focused on just how enterprise software should work, could work, enterprise consulting. I remember when I first met Ben, and he was like helping some influencer on Instagram, and I'm like, stop selling Airtable, start selling processing. So I really love the concept of how you develop people and organizations into not using tools, but having workflow. In 2015, 16, I started looking for a replacement because my entire life system that I ran historically was on Google Calendar, believe it or not. So I was one of Zapier's first customers. I know Wade really well. I used to break Zapier because I'd have so many Zaps running that would just grab stuff from, and we're talking like 2008, like early stuff. Like, in 8, I was using Yahoo Pipes, but it doesn't matter if anyone remembers Yahoo Pipes. But it was just this whole thing. And then I needed a replacement. So I started looking around, and I found this thing by 2017 called Pipedrive. And Pipedrive is kind of like the CRM system, kind of a light backend. I don't even know if it's a real thing anymore, to be honest with you. And at the same time, I found Airtable. And I used Airtable and Notion in tandem for about a year. And I'm not going to lie, I loved Notion. I loved everything about it. But something kept calling to Airtable because there was no database in Notion yet. Notion was pretty. It left me feeling like I'm accomplished because it was like having an air freshener and an old beat up car, but it didn't actually get the job done. I wouldn't make it to my destination. Whereas Airtable really allowed me to come in and say, I know how things work together, but not in silos. And that's where Airtable just slowly won me over. And then since then, the evolution of my system, which became Daretable, that's what I first called it, because I thought it's kind of like daring to try to do something as complex with Airtable, was just 2018 was System 1. By 2020, I had System 1.5, which was, and that was when I actually interviewed with you, Alli. System was 1.5. And I had a lot of extensions or apps or whatever they called the dashboard section way back then. And that was really a major win for me. But it wasn't until they did interfaces in 2021, I think, that I started working with System 2, which was, I left System 1 alone. I still used it every day, but I kind of wanted to work more with like what's going on in my mind and my life, in addition to like all the life stuff. And I'll show you all this in a minute. And that's by 2022, they had an interface contest, and I won that. And that new system was called Caretable. So then I had Daretable and Caretable I was running simultaneously. At the same time, I'm running the Daretable conference and getting involved in the community and still being Chris Dancy, D-List Internet Celebrity, all that kind of stuff. But it was weird. By 2023, when we did the conference in San Francisco, I was breaking. I'm not lying to you. You guys know if you have to use more than one Airtable system, like you might have a client system here and a personal system and a business system. You guys know it's like Airtable's great, but you end up in just gigantic silos, not these miniature ones. So I needed to find a way to kind of unify my client experience, my life experience, all the things that I had built. And I started rebuilding the system into one system. And it got to the point, I think, in 2020, early 2020, this year, where I felt like I could probably use interfaces full time. I remember calling Ben in February saying, I don't know if I've told you, but I rarely go into classic Airtable anymore. And that was a big deal for me. I'll be honest with you. That I felt like something broke in my mind because I didn't think I'd ever use interfaces. It was cute, and I understood how to use it for Caretable because Caretable started as an interface. It didn't start as classic Airtable. I don't even know what people call the old Airtable. But it's like Camille said earlier, unless you're willing to be an old timer and rebuild the wheel, you're always going to have a little bit of a bumpy ride. It's just the reality of Airtable. And I think for me, like now, since I've unified the two systems, life is so much easier, and then you add portals and all the other things I've done with it. So is that enough of a background before I do a little demo?
Yeah.
No, that's
awesome.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much.
I could have just kept ranting with you guys and not even talked about my stuff because like that was so much. It's like when you're in Airtable, I'm not in all these Slacks and stuff, but when you use Airtable and you don't have other people to talk to, it's like going to a playground and going, oh, your kid beats up other people too, yeah, and suddenly you're a friend, because another parent understands how bad kids are, right? All right. So is that a bad example?
Maybe before you jump in there, give us some context of Daretable, what your experience has been like running that, what the future holds.
Well, yeah. I mean, in 2020, after I met with Alli, I actually got this idea that I really wanted to create, I think, a more an IRL community, because our conference, our first one was virtual, and we signed up a lot of people real quick. And I was enamored with what Dan had built with the Back the Air community. He had the video, the podcast. He had a website. He had an app store where you could browse other people's stuff. He had his own apps. He had his own consulting practice. To me, Dan and what Dan was doing was everything that you should see in a healthy ecosystem, right? Someone doing community, someone doing podcasts, someone doing directories, all of it. I mean, it was Airtable Universe before there was Airtable Milky Way, right? So I wanted to really think about what would that look like beyond what Dan was doing. And that involved what I would think everybody would want, which is traditional in-person conferences. But it was 2020. Right? What are you going to do? I mean, we couldn't do much in 2020, right? So that's when I did the first Airtable. I tried to do another one in 21, but had some trouble getting people kind of around the idea of like, what does that look like? By 2022, I said, I'm just doing it. I'm just going to spend the money. So we had our first in-person one in Austin, Texas, and 80 or 90 people there, and we sold tickets. We lost about $7,000. And I split that one with Ben Green. And then Ben had bought a house, so he couldn't help in 2023. And that one was in San Francisco. That one we broke 120 people. We had it at Airtable headquarters. That one was just amazing. It was just a lot of work, though, I'll be honest with you. That was the first year that I made a little money on Airtable. So I think I brought home about $15,000 or $20,000 from that event with 120 people. Now, that being said, people are like, that's a lot of money. The work, I don't think people understand the work behind a conference. And then this year we did New York. And this year the goal was have an event in New York, have it be on something that's 3 floors, have it be something with at least 300 people. We broke that number. Have it be in partnership with Airtable, and really take it to kind of the next level. So something that because people flew in from all over the world for San Francisco. And yeah, so it was an amazing event this year. Probably broke even. I spent $100,000 of my own money on this. So I mean, it wasn't cheap, right? So that's the other thing. She was like, "That's just an event. Like, your ticket shouldn't be $400." I'm like, literally, the building is $60,000, right? Houses cost that much, right, in certain parts of the country. But, I worked real hard to make sure we had a good partnership with Airtable where I could help get some of those costs absorbed. And then, of course, 2 months before this year, we planned next year. So I flew out to Chicago. I thought if you're going to do Chicago, you have to do something iconic. So the Sears Tower, if you're old enough, that's what we used to call I think it's called something different now. I think it's Willis Tower. And yeah, we're aiming for 500 people next year. We're aiming for a separate track that has fill out involved. I've been working with, I've asked Nelson if he wants to bring the partners back for some partner training before and after. There was a partner summit this year where they had partners kind of talk about their best practices. But again, as an old timer, like it takes a lot more to be a successful partner than a website, right? It takes a lot more to be a successful partner than good talent, right? If you had someone like a Camille or an Alli, you can be a successful partner, but it's even more than that, right? It's the sales process. It's the value you bring to the organization. And I really want to focus on that, helping those partners. But the other thing is I really want our users, the attendees, who this year we had a majority of enterprises and a lot of education. I really want them to start to think about what is the experience. Right? I love Airtable makers, but at the end of the year, we have to learn to think about the Airtable takers. And what are we building for those people that make them feel so empowered to want to use Airtable? Meaning, like, if I were an employee and I was going to a company and then they knew that they ran operations on Airtable, I'd want to go there. Not because I'm going to design it or build it, because I know how the system works, right? Airtable is where like salespeople used to follow Salesforce. I'll go here because they use Salesforce too, right? IT, I'll go here because they use ServiceNow too. Sorry, I'm ranting. I'll stop.
No, you're good. No, it's been great. I think the 3 of us have been at all 3, I believe. I think we're some of you are faithful.
Yeah, you've spoken. I think I don't know. Haven't some of you spoken at every single one, including the virtual?
In a way. One year I only did a scare table, so not a full session, but I have had the mic at all of them.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think about it? I mean, you have a different perspective than I do. Do you like them?
It's wonderful. It's like what you were no, like what you were saying earlier about like the playground and like talking to like other parents, kind of like that's a good analogy. It's like you're there, it's like our people, you know, we get to just talk about what we love, which is building systems and learning about different tools, which is amazing. It's so cool to get to see everyone in person there. We really appreciate you putting all that effort.
Listen, I'll be honest with you. I mean, even though it's a lot of work and money, I love it. I'm not going to lie. I love it. Because I also, like, I wasn't even going to speak this year. And then someone was like, you have to do the Chris Dancy shtick, right? I'm like, okay. Because I also love, you know, when I got to show during Scare Table this year, my God system where I, you know, create gods to talk to. You know, I love that kind of stuff because I just love unorthodox uses of Airtable. But that being said, I've gone, like Dan was talking about earlier, I've gone to some of the Airtable events now, the user groups and things. It's not the same.
No.
You know, that's more like a soft sales demo with a little bit of product updates I could have gotten in a webinar. Like, and the people that you're sitting with, you don't really know. There's not really one of these get to know people type of routines. And I really think you're not really a community until you can talk to each other freely. And I think that's where your podcast has always really allowed people to do that. You know, long before we had any type of event, you guys were talking freely, not afraid of retribution or making someone mad or something like that about Airtable. And, you know, you're only as comfortable as what you're not allowed to say.
Yep. Very cool. All right. We need to jump into your base. We got to see this. So Camille will probably take the remainder of the time, and then we'll have Camille's next week. So we do have
I can go super fast, by the way.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think people want to see it. Yeah.
Am I sharing?
All right. Yeah, now you're on.
Okay. So just a real quick overview. When I originally sketched this back in 2017, I basically understood, like, okay, Airtable is a table system. So I created some basic tables. One was just like me, my family, my business. We had this whole concept of values that would drive all decisions, all records linked to a value, doesn't matter what type of record it is, timeline, etc. And I slowly built out through 2017 these interconnected tables that made everything in my life just start to fit together almost like building blocks. I'm super visual, so I have to see things kind of like this. So if you've watched any of my other talks on Airtable, I did this before I even built the Airtable because I wanted to understand how it worked. Once I had that, I had to see how those processes mapped together. And that's when I built what I call the version 1 of my life map. And that's all the individual tables in their life dependent process buckets, right? So a liability versus where I'm getting money from versus how I'm keeping records versus how I'm planning, etc. You know, for me, Airtable had to be this really interconnected system. And I had, you know, as I've said in my keynote and on calls before, I've done complex IT massive systems from everybody from the Waffle House to the White House, literally have it put in their systems, right? I can't tell you how many major companies have designed just, you know, 10, 15, 100,000 people systems that connect all together. So handling my life was going to be pretty easy, I thought, but I've learned a lot since then. The first version of it, which is just a copy of it here, has all those same tables. It was really complex. And I like to think of these early versions as, you know, it was great because it was all run by views, right? So if I wanted to say, hey, just show me all these different views, boom, I had them. It was what it was. You know, fast forward then to, you know, 2021 when it first came out, I tried, right? I'm not gonna lie to you. I never showed anybody this. This was like one of the first interfaces I ever built, right? And again, it looks horrible. It looks like Airtable, you know, just slapped in something ugly. I didn't like it, but I understood where we were going. By the time we got late 2021, early 2022, interfaces had evolved a little bit, and that's when I did Airtable. And Airtable really allowed me to come in and start experimenting with what I would call simplified interface design. So basically, you start with a really straightforward little interface, and then you say, how would you build that up? So that's the same interface with a little bit more, that same interface with a little bit more, that same interface with a little bit more, right? That same interface with a little bit more. How would you keep layering it? And then could you put permission models around those different layers of an interface? And that's where I thought to myself, oh, okay, there's a there. But then I used these two systems again, and this system was massive. So this particular system, if I can jump into the data side of it, has this really interesting thing where every single unique identifier in my life historically was whatever the record table was, but care table's unique identifier was this concept of a moment in time. And what I did was I mapped my entire life from the day I was born out to the day I project I'll die, which is 30-some thousand individual days, and then mapped where the sun, the moon, the stars, the sunrise, the sunset was at any point in time. So what's that, 31,494 days or records? And then I thought, well, this could be easy. Now everything just rolls back up to a day record. Does that make sense? I don't want to go too fast. So once I had that, I thought I need to start over. And that's when I actually built the version that I use today. And I've been on it almost, it'll be a year in January. And that's just one system that unifies all the processes, everything together in an interface first, mobile first, except for overviews, where I can get to stuff. And it's broken into really simple sections. So I've got my today section where I've kind of got the things I get to quick versus my public things. So public things being social, financial, etc. A really quick and dirty little dashboard on tasks and billable hours. Something called a quick journal, because I use the mobile now when I'm out and about and I needed a way to get in there really quick. The journal section, which just takes me into all the different parts of like the reflection part of my life. So understanding where I am, what I'm working on, where I am in my life, how much life I've used, how much life I have left. My journaling system, which I'll jump into real quick. The journaling system every day has some different sections. So it's kind of the same type of thing I was doing before with the different layouts where I laid information on top, but I just use filter switches to show and not show things. The journaling system allows me to come in 3 times a day and just kind of touch base, like where am I, what am I doing well with, what am I not. I have a lookup based on the types of things I write to try to match the emotion I'm experiencing. It has my numbers and stats from the day, so how much I slept, how am I feeling when I get up, my daily summaries, eating, drinking, water, meditating, etc. The places I go, that's a integration with Foursquare, Swarm. So when I check in, it puts it here. And what's really nice about that is when I bring up one of these attached records, it see all the other times I was there. So if I'm at the post office and say, well, last time I was here, you know, what happened? And I can jump right back into that day and look at it and say, oh, that's what happened. I was also the day I planted my tulips. And then interactions. So interactions just link in through an integration with email and calendar automatically. So when I want to come in here and actually look at an interaction, I can pull up one of these interactions, see who I was talking with. I have an accountability flag. So I think something's going to come back to bite me in the future. I flag it so I can quickly get into people who might say, I never said that. And actually, here's a view for you. You guys know what I'm talking about. And then it goes through, I use a lot of AI in there. So it goes through and reads my emails and my notes and gives me a feeling analysis. I also filter by feeling analysis so I can fire people from my life. And also just a real quick summary so I know what I should do and what I did do. Because a lot of times I don't want to go back and reread my emails and notes, etc. Is this interesting, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because I don't know like how much, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. And then tasks, same type of things when I work on stuff, all the Airtable tasks, that was there, City of Johnstown, which is a new client. Health milestones. So I just started, I'm trying to drop 15 pounds I gained during the conference. Just started that. And then again, using a summary. So I have a backfill on each day in the journal, which grabs all the text from it and dumps into a big blob field, which tries to say what was the highest and lowest value you had each day based on who you talked to, what you did. If I favorite a photo on my phone, it goes to a special Dropbox, which then comes in here through an integration. So just my favorite photos for each day. So like if I go back and look at the day before, you see those. And it's kind of nice because you kind of have this really quick view of your life in real time. It also makes browsing your life super in. And then at the beginning of the day, I have a coach that tells me what I need to focus on by looking at the last month's worth of journals and tasks and spending. And I have a daily spiritual journal or AI view, and then a daily life coach at the end of the day tells me kind of this is what you need to think of. And the coaches really kind of draw the whole thing together. So it's kind of not only like my client work and my work, but it brings it all together. I can jump into the coach section if I just want to go back and look at what coaches have been telling me to look for patterns and things. And then, of course, I can go into Christory, which is right now 21 years worth of days that are in Airtable where I can go back and relive any day in real time. Spirituality is just that. So lots of fun stuff. I do intention setting at the beginning of each quarter and year so I know what I'm focusing on. A time journal so I can kind of, there's a lot there. My system does tarot, so it draws tarot and does tarot readings with AI each day. So for example, if I were to go back in today and look at this morning's tarot, I can just jump in here, and it's just a script that pulls a tarot card randomly and then does an AI tarot reading based on my journal to let me know where I am. If I want to pray to a god or gods, I can select. I built a pantheon of gods from across time and history through every major religion. I can select one of those gods. It tells me a little bit about that god, and I can ask them a question. Health is just everything to do with my family's health. So a dashboard just lets us know all of our different health events for me, my spouse. I can look at those events, jump into them, symptoms versus supplements versus prescriptions, inoculations, which is kind of neat. Like I can go and ask Airtable AI and just say, when was my last flu shot? And it knows because it's all in there. Ask Airtable AI with my system's been kind of crazy. I'll be honest with you. I can go into events and look at my spouse needed to have some fingers, some stitches on their finger. I use AI to go ahead and take the treatment notes and convert them into something usable that my family can understand. And then emotions, because everything's tied to emotion, I can go and look up any emotion I've ever had and jump back to the day I felt it and see who influenced that emotion. Home is like everything to do with my house. My house is literally, and every single Airtable is also tied to an external website. So there's a Chris Dancy type that all this is. So these are all Airtable records about my house. But home is really where we come in here and look at like tasks to do, like things you have to do within your house. So these are the different tasks: laundry, plant care, etc. Where they get done, how they get done. Assets within the house. So this is in date order. So how often I buy an asset. So there's my new Mac that I just got. All the information tied to that Mac, the receipt, etc. Locations are places that I visit or go in life. That's the historical record to physical places outside of my home. Places are things inside my home, so I can jump in there and then see what's going on in that place, a history of what it used to look like versus what it looks like now, the assets tied to it. And then a home history. I've lived in a lot of homes over my life because I had a really turbulent childhood. So what I did was I built a time machine to go back and look at any house that I've lived in and relive some of the memories in that house and what was important to the people, places, and things that were tied to that home. This is my first apartment outside of Maryland. Family is just my spouse and I, a dashboard of what's going on with us, how old we are. We can jump into those different family records. A memory database where we have significant memories that we share with our people and friends and family to contribute to this. So there's a form they fill out where they can link memories and like, hey, I remember that when you came to visit us. It's this really great little system. I love it. It means a lot to me. And then just history. You know, I use the Gantt chart to look at like really long periods of time going back to my great-great-grandparents when they came from Ireland. Work is just everything to do with work. Work dashboard. I've got something called Navigator, which allows me to work with my clients. So it's kind of a view into that client, who I'm working with, what products I've sold them, from what service lines, and I can jump in and see the actual deliverable that they've gotten from me. Also helps with referring other clients to me. I could go on and on and on. Yeah. Interactions is just like day-to-day stuff, like when I'm in here working, again, with City of Johnstown, AI analysis on that. Sales, marketing, I don't know. I feel like I'm just going on and on and on now. Was this fun? Give me questions. Finances. I love my bills, like being able to come in and like pay bills right from here and know kind of when's the last time I paid for them. One of my favorite things in financial is statements. My accountant used to charge me $100 a month to reconcile my statements. So what I did was I created a routine using Airtable AI that it pulls in the statement for you. And then Airtable AI goes in and pulls out all the information from the statement for the reconciliation. So I don't have to do it. So the transactions are rolled up to it, auto tagged. I don't know. I could go on and on. I feel like I'm maybe going over
This is crazy. I do have a question. So I look at that, I'm like, man, that is a lot of work to maintain. Like, do you feel it's a burden? Like, or this is just a part of your life, like to keep this up to date?
Well, you gotta remember, yeah, it was a lot to build, but it's been, I was last in show 5 years ago and I started building it 3 years before that. Right. So, no, because I live in Journal, right? So if you're in Journals where I put the notes in and I link to things, most of that stuff gets linked or attached through emails that I send or calendar appointments that I make or transactions. So like if I spend money, they just come in there automatic because they're tied to that date is the key. So I don't think there's a lot I'll be honest with you. It doesn't feel like a lot to me because I'm just using it. It's like my interface to my life. But I can understand where if I was watching what I just showed you, I would be like, there's no way. There's no way. I would break if I tried to use that.
Well,
But
somewhere in the middle there, you built a God system.
Well, it's a subsystem, right? So it's not, yeah, it's a sub. And then, if you go to goddesstechne.com, the public can get to that subsystem too. Just like mytechnopagan.com, the public can get to the tarot subsystem. My doctor has a whole Chris Dancy subsystem she can access. My lawyer. So yeah, I just think in the future, if you don't control your identity beyond what you put on social media, you might have challenges. And I'm not afraid to fire anyone from my life.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's amazing. So yeah, that in comparison, here's my daily
to-do list
system.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, it's shows like yours that really inspired me. I mean, had I not met with Alli originally, I would have never shown this to anyone. And had I not had our community to talk to, I just want to say, if you watch this and you don't know me, or you watch this and you do know me and you're overwhelmed, don't be. I think you can do anything with your life. I just think you should care about you as much as software pretends to care. And that's where Airtable comes in.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you, Chris, for coming on. And our claim to fame is that we're connected to the most connected man on earth. So appreciate that. Always good to have you. We'll have you back on, and we'll see everybody next week. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OntoAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the Built on Air podcast.